We have another speech with Kamala to look at, this time on the issue of Gaza, where it seems that she differs from Biden quite a bit, coming off more empathetic and calling attention to the humanitarian crisis, the need for a ceasefire, frankly, in what is a genocide. So I wanted to look over just a few of these clips and interject with some context as to what's going on, what this could look like, where is needed.
I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
So if you're wondering about the current situation with Gaza, that's always ever changing. And remember, Israel isn't letting people into Gaza the way they used to, probably because of the horrendous optics of the amount of people they've been killing. So these numbers are probably far greater than what is being reported or what we can get word of. But nearly 40,000 are confirmed dead, as according to the last reporting, almost 16,000 of those being children, 11,000 of those being women, over 70% of it being innocent civilians, with over 85,000 total injuries and 2 million people being displaced, and 6,000 hours of bombing, the equivalent of 250 days in a row. Whole days, by the way. And you have to keep in mind, there's tens of thousands of people missing that are presumed dead under rubble from the buildings. Over 60 or 70% of Gaza has been leveled, and there's tens of thousands of people missing in that rubble that are pretty much dead by all accounts, but not reported as such until it's confirmed, with Lancet reporting estimating that combined with deaths due to health issues caused by the conflict, health issues that will cause death in the coming weeks, coming months, a death toll of 186,000 would not only be unreasonable, but it would be on the conservative end. 62% of homes in Gaza are destroyed, and over 1.1 million people are dealing with famine. One of Biden's weakest positions was his ideological inability to go against Israel, being one of AIPAC's biggest recipients of funds, never holding Israel to a single red line that he himself imposed, even when they clearly crossed it, right? If you go into Rafah, we're going to stop sending shipments. They bomb Rafah refugee camps. He still sends shipments. But things are now turning around with the possibility of a Harris presidency, as staffers for Biden who resigned over Gaza and his inability to handle it properly have already claimed that they are much more hopeful that Harris would do the right thing and that she seems a lot more empathetic to the situation. And her willingness to stand up to Netanyahu, protest his Senate speech and not go, and now speak to the destruction he's causing is a good sign.
There is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And it is important that we recall what the deal involves. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Israel is secure, all the hostages are released, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done.
And what she's saying is very important, though. You have to keep in mind it is obviously self-serving for Netanyahu to continue this, as when it ends, he's almost definitely out of power and then nothing more than an international war criminal. So we can only hope that he will heed Harris's urging more so than Biden, who had shown him unwillingness to keep him to his word in the first place. This is a man who is vastly unpopular in his own country, hoping to prevent elections because he would undoubtedly lose them, as then he would again just be out of power power, facing ICC warrants for his own war crimes. The ICJ has also ruled that Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories is illegal and has been so since 1967. But Netanyahu's far right-wing and extremist government refuses to heed to the demands of international courts. This is, it's just insane that we're still backing someone who's doing all the, like, they have illegal settlers, they're doing a genocide, and international courts have struck them down, but America's still like, you go, brother. Trump is saying, finish the job, Israel. Like, it's disgusting, the rhetoric that has been employed around this, largely because AIPAC controls our political sphere, which is conversation for another day. But Netanyahu had built this far right-wing Zionist coalition to stay in power. It allowed him to win the elections back in, I think, 2021, 2020, sometime around that sphere, who have then since attacked LGBTQ communities in Israel, their rights in Israel, almost specifically for the drastic implications that it could have on Palestinians as well and their civil society. So we must hope that this ceasefire deal pushes through, that the international pressure, the ICJ courts, the ICC warrants, Harris is urging, Biden, urging somewhat, America's implication in this and what could happen, sanctions, all other countries, all human rights organizations calling this a genocide. We have to hope that this level of pressure caves in this genocidal government eventually, now rather than later, and brings peace to Palestinians and their right to a statehood once and for all.